Hey there, me again. Did I mention that we'd love for you to like and share this video and subscribe to our channel because we have a lot of good stuff still to come. And how great would it be to create some community around this conversation? Take a moment to share your comments, your insights, and your thoughts in the comment section below, where you'll also find a few additional resources we've created for you. Enjoy. Hello and welcome to this edition of RealityChek Conversations. I'm Tanya Cervoni. Today I'm joined by my colleague Luc Beaudry. He's the Director of Talent Development Solutions here at Canadian Management Center. You can read about Luc's background by clicking on the link below this video. Luc, thanks for joining in the conversation.
Happy to be here.
Great. Well, we wanted to talk about change, and specifically for those folks leading others through this time of transition, what's really different that we need to understand, that it's not change management as usual. So I thought maybe you could start by talking about what is the typical process we go through when we're facing a change, what's different about this pandemic situation, and what leaders need to be thinking about.
Absolutely. And the process we typically go through in a time of change is often illustrated with the change curve. Many of the folks out there will be familiar with that. Just as a refresher, the change curve, it maps out the stages, phases we go through, starting with shock or denial as we first find out about the change potentially, and then may make our way through resistance and maybe a bit of frustration and confusion before we finally make our way through exploration, start asking questions differently, seeing possibilities, taking positive action that eventually lead us to some commitment, some engagement, and hopefully a new normal. What I've just described there is quite linear, as though we'd always go through it in exactly that order. You might imagine that's not the case, and you'd be correct. We can certainly bounce around the change curve as things progress. In this particular COVID situation, part of what's unique is that things are moving so fast that many of us may not have felt or be feeling that we have the permission or the entitlement to actually share and feel the things we normally would through denial and resistance, or to express those. And in parallel to that, businesses are moving, changing, pivoting so fast that the type of work we're doing reflects that too. And we're doing things differently. We're doing things in new ways. We're doing new things. And it feels like we're in exploration, commitment. It doesn't necessarily feel normal yet, but certainly it feels like we're further along the curve. And as though, okay, well, I guess we're good on the denial and resistance front. We've made it this far. But the reality is that those reactions, those emotions haven't necessarily had a chance to be fully processed or managed. And as leaders, we've not necessarily had or taken the time to do that for our team members as we normally would when we plan for change.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So implications, advice, strategy for leaders then, what do we need to be doing in light of that?
Three main things I would recommend leaders do. First, over-listen. Second, coach based on what you're hearing. And third, demonstrate courage and vulnerability. So let me tell you a bit more about all three of those. So first, over-listening. Right now, lots of communication going on. That's critically important because there's a lot of information to share. So when we're talking about over-listening, what I'm recommending is that, whether it's in a regular team meeting, a one-on-one check-in, an informal coffee break with your team, create the space for the individuals or the collective to take you where they are. Let them guide the conversation, create space for that. And what you're doing during that time is you're really tuning in. You're listening for, what are they talking about? What are the themes? What's different? What stands out? And what that gives you are the data points and the insight necessary to know how to best support them. So that's how you're going to glean that information.
Yeah, and just based on our experience with coaching folks, I would assume that the quality of that listening or that conversation is really going to come down to the quality of the questions you ask. So perhaps you could share a couple of good questions to be asking right now.
Yeah, and there are many. Keep your questions open and non-judgmental. That we are really trying to create a safe space for people to express themselves. So everything from, what might be getting in the way of you feeling as comfortable or as productive as you would like to. the hypothetical questions are always great for these types of situations because they put reality on pause for a brief moment. So, if I could wave a magic wand, what could I do that would make your work and your life easier right this minute? And again, just you're asking those questions not to turn around and quickly give them suggestions, explanations, or solutions, but really just to gather some insight. And once you've got that, the second recommendation is around coach based on what you're hearing. And so the data points you will just have gathered are going to lead to the next questions you ask, to how you want to explore that, and direct your coaching to helping your team and team members focus on what they can control. That's really critical at a time like this. There's a lot happening, a lot changing, much of which is outside of our control, but a lot of which is not. And so helping them see that can provide a sense of normalcy, of stability, of predictability in an otherwise really messy context, potentially. And then finally, likely the most difficult part of this equation, demonstrating vulnerability and courage. What we're talking about here is we're during a time where your team needs you to role model the delicate balancing act between vulnerability and courage. They need you to provide direction, hope, confidence. They need you to do that with poise, despite the uncertainty that surrounds you as well as them. And that's where the key is they also need to know that this confidence in this direction is coming from another human being, a human being who's also experiencing potentially some fears, some concerns, navigating their own way through the change curve. So letting them in on that, acknowledging those concerns and fears is really critical for them to see to see you as that relatable leader who's going through it with them, but also leading them through it, and role modeling that willingness to do the balancing act is a critical piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, I can see how that's the huge leadership challenge right now, balancing being real and being optimistic.
Absolutely.
That's really good. So listen, coach, give people a sense of control, and then be authentic and vulnerable. Love it.
Got it.
Thank you so much for that. I do have one last question to end the conversation on a note of gratitude or positivity. And that is, if you could share one thing that you've either witnessed or something that you've experienced that's been a positive thing coming out of this COVID-19 situation.
Well, thanks for that question. I'll give you a personal example. So for me, I've always been really good at accepting and dealing with change that I can't control. That's, it's a plus, I think, in some situations. When there are options, however, I am a notorious late adapter. It takes me a while to make my way to exploration, to starting to look at possibilities. And I've not really had this luxury in the last couple of weeks. And so I've had to make my way through the change curve more quickly than I would like to, relating to some aspects of my work and some of the projects I'm working on. And I've not fully settled in. I'm not at the full commitment stage. That would be foolish of me to think that's where I am. But I will say that I feel a lot better about being where I am further along the curve than I thought I would. And in large part, I'm going to go back to tip number one, which is for me, it's thanks to basically my colleagues who have been very generous with their listening. So creating the space for me to air my concerns without feeling judged, that is huge. And also the space to explore and to ask the questions and to be confused and to say, okay, but what about this and what about that and what about that? And feeding off of folks who may be in a different place on the change curve. So that's been hugely impactful for me.
Well, thank you for walking the talk on strategy number 3, vulnerability, and being open and authentic with us. That's great.
Pleasure.
I don't know if you could hear this, but even the birds on my balcony have joined in to listen. So
again, it's lovely. I think they're singing from the same song sheet.
That's it. It's an air of gratitude all around. All right. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for the insights. And that wraps up this episode of RealityChek Conversations. If you've got something of value today, please take a moment to share this video with friends and family and to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss a future episode. Thank you for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.